who's a publisher here, and he's asked me, to do a project for him. And I was talking about stuff. I said, I've got lots of stuff on my laptop. I've translated whole books. They're on my laptop. I don't know. I mean, if you're serious about a reading list or something, about some of these things, there's a really good book by Alistair McGrath. He's at Oxford. It's called The Twilight of Atheism. You might want to buy that book. He's also written some really good responses against Richard Dawkins. So if you go to one of your local bookstores, the only reason I mention him is because, honestly, I have not read anything from a contemporary Muslim that's worth, that I believe personally, and I may be prejudiced here, that's worth the ink and the paper it's written on as a response. I hate to say that, but that's the case. I've read some good works, I have some articles by Shaykh Naeem and Abdul Wali, Allah bless them. So I can recommend Alistair McGrath at Oxford. His works, his rebuttals against Richard Dawkins, I think would be beneficial for you. John Polkinghorne at Oxford is another Oxford theologian. His works are really good in dealing with the belief in God in a scientific age. Remember the name Alistair McGrath? It's McGrath. You can get his books, you can order them, you can go online and Google him. Honestly, reading some of his works, his rebuttals against atheism, can really, really inspire you. And when you read those works, you'll actually know what Naeem's talking about. You'll understand what Naeem is saying when he's finding sort of this experience when it comes to Muslim output. Even some of the books that are coming out now, for example, some of the classical texts, like Imam Tahawi's works, and some of the creedal texts that are being published, they're being translated now. They're just people are just translating the Arabic text and giving it to you in English with some footnotes. And that is still not sufficient for you to argue cases on the belief in the existence of God, unfortunately. So I encourage, maybe it's one of you in this room who's going to do that. Maybe one of you in this room right now is going to be that person of this generation who's going to pen a text that will be a contemporary response to a crisis of faith. Maybe it will be one of you. But I don't think it will be you if you are not spiritually grounded and you have sound knowledge from the empirical knowledges of Islam. The only person who can write a sensitive response is if you've got training from classical and contemporary works on Muslim theology. You can speak that way. You get awareness of a Quranic dialectic. You're aware of God's hujjah, God's arguments in the Quran, about how He presents Himself. Because if the Quran came, at the time it came, the Quran must have responses to the contemporary crisis that we live in the modern age, but it will require a contemporary Muslim deeply engrossed with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to mine them out. You understand that? You can't just rely upon reading Ibn Kathir and Razi to expect to find the truth there. Because in their world reference and frames of references, it isn't your world. And some of the arguments don't hold up anymore. I believe the answers are in the Quran. But you must be a person of taqwa that Allah will teach you. The taqwa is here and not here. It's as simple as that. And that's the path of tasawwuf. So Alistair McGrath, you can read it. So I believe that. I'll tell you something. After meeting my Shaykh, and I'm not telling you this because it's like to pat my back. I'm just going to be honest with you. I read a lot. I've read a lot. I'm like a bookworm. I'm going back with more books than when I came, man. All these books, I'm a proverbial donkey who carries books around. My knees are hurting. And I'm hurting. I'm hurt because I'm sitting here talking to you than doing something else. Anyway, and when I went to Medina, I left America. I had it. I had it of being with Muslims who were outwardly bickering about this person's like this and their Islam is wrong because their beard's too short or their thobe's not long enough. I got tired of the Zionist enemy argument, always talking about Palestine, 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 as if I became a Muslim just to protest Israel. I got tired of Muslims who were saying I couldn't read Ghazali because he was an innovator. And he had all those da'if hadith in his ihya. I didn't become a Muslim to be in a mosque where there was censorship. So I had it. I had it because the things I aspired to as a Muslim weren't panning out. The beautiful things I read about were happening in me. Sure, I had a turban on my head and I had a thobe on my back and a miswak in my pocket. But I had an empty heart. And I knew if I stayed in America, and this was in the 1980s, I may as well just die. And so I made a choice. I quit my job, I gave my card to my mom, I got accepted at Islamic University in Medina, which I knew was not the best place to go, but I went anywhere because I knew it was a ticket out. And I told myself, if I can get to Medina and I hang out there, God will let me meet a man who will help me. So I went to Medina and I hung out in Mission Nabawi for 18 months. I did my tour of duty at Jamia Islamiyya. I did my classes of Arabic. I ate the chicken meals. I watched Starving Cats. I listened to extreme Salafis from Britain bickering about how their parents were kafirs because they kissed their thumbnails and wiped their eyes. And they argued amongst themselves who was the better Salaf, whose beard was the best, what's the best way for the beard, and you know, this and that, and how can we get jariyas, you know, and can we bring back slavery, and how can I go back to Trinidad and overthrow the government? And I got tired of those people. And I'm not making this up, this is what was going on at Jamia Islamiyya, by the way, in conversations. How do I get to Bosnia from here? Do I know a Saudi who can pay for me to get there? That's what I was running into. Going to the Prophet's Mosque with this construction going on, with blasting and tearing down the architects, the old buildings of the past because the Saudis hate their history. And I hung out there. I met a sheikh, who took me to Turkey. I spent about a decade with him. And it straightened me out. And in that process, I experienced that the things that Allah is so active, that Allah is alive, really alive, and that He is concerned about me. And I wasn't just this one Muslim amongst the Muslim Ummah, the masses of believers, but I was a unique individual, a unique soul in this moment of existence, of self-awareness. This is my moment, my time. And I was with a person who I experienced that he was in his moments with God. And it was beautiful. And Allah showed me things, and I saw things. And anyway then, but that's one thing, but what I got was that in time, I began to have understandings of the religion that I never thought of before. That I could read the Quran. And by reading the Quran, I could read a text, a verse of the Quran, and all of a sudden, a lot of things would just come into me, connections and understandings, and it could write this hadith and this, and then I could see constructions of realities. I'm like, wow, this is really interesting. And the point was, I realized